In the state of Maryland had a huge effort underway over the past 2 years to develop the state's plans to address sea level rise. And as you probably heard this morning, depending on how you look at it, we're the third or fourth most vulnerable state in the country to sea level rise, and that's because of our over 3,000 miles of coastline. We also have already experienced some foot of sea level rise in the Chesapeake Bay, and our scientists tell us that we are going to continue to experience some level of sea level rise depending on what actions we in the country take over the next couple of years. So we're planning for that. Governor O'Malley convened a climate change commission just about 2 years ago now, and it involved over 100 people, some of you are here, who worked really tirelessly on 3 efforts over the past 17 months or so, looking at the science of climate change. What does it mean? We hear the global picture, but what does it really mean for Maryland? What can we expect to see here? So we're one of the few states to have that, thanks to Dr. Don Bosch at the University of Maryland, that assessment. And then we looked at greenhouse gas emissions. How can the state reduce greenhouse gas emissions? What are the best approaches to take? We know it's being discussed at the federal level. And then the third part of that work was, how can the state adapt to the sea level rise that we've already experienced and we know we will continue to experience no matter what we do. And so that looks at the land use, particularly in the coastal areas. So the Climate Action Plan was released this past year, and the group took over 300 possible options, particularly for greenhouse gas emissions reductions, and winnowed them down. And apropos of our topic today, one of the main criteria in winnowing those 300 plus options down to 42 recommendations was, what are the economic benefits and costs of implementing each of those actions? And the very good news is, and I preface this by saying that these numbers are gross, and when I tell you what the range of the number is, you'll see how gross, and they need to be refined. But the preliminary estimate is that by implementing the 42 recommendations that were selected, and again with the economic consequences in mind, has the potential to generate for the state between $2 and $4 billion if they were all implemented between now and 2020. Now, as a realistic matter, they will not all be implemented, but many of them will be. And so we are poised to see a very, we're told by our experts, a significant economic boost from that, which is very good news. The Commission also recommended a 25% reduction of greenhouse gas emissions by 2020, and this is based on the International Panel on Climate Change, which is this global group of scientists who have been continually evaluating greenhouse gas emissions and what needs to occur by when. The reason we are focused so heavily on 25% reduction by 2020 is that we are told by the scientists that it will be basically more efficient and cheaper to make the reductions earlier. So the earlier you start, the better off you are, which is in part why Maryland and 8 or 9 other states are moving ahead, even though we all know this would be more effectively and efficiently done at the federal level. But basically, we're hedging our bets on these costs by moving ahead now. I know you heard from Diane Franks at the Department of the Environment this morning about the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. That is one of the programs that is already underway. And just as an aside, because I know Diane would not tell you this, but if you just step back and think about the work that you do day to day, the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative is basically a collaboration between 10 states who individually came together and decided to create a regulatory program. So unlike all the other regulatory programs that we see across our country, there was no federal mandate, no explicit direction on how to do this. And it's really an amazing accomplishment. Diane and a very small group of her colleagues from other states have done incredible work, not only to get this program designed, but then the mechanics of getting an electronic auction set up for carbon allowances And we've had 2 auctions to date, so it's really a credit to her expertise and her colleagues in the other states. It's hard to overstate. In the field I work in, environmental regulation, it's probably one of the most significant accomplishments. So Diane deserves great credit, and I know she would not tell you. That's one piece of Maryland's greenhouse gas reduction strategy. So we already have another couple of pieces in place. A renewable portfolio standard, which was recently strengthened. Governor O'Malley's Empower Maryland initiative, which is his initiative to reduce electricity consumption 15% by 2015, and then something called the Maryland Clean Cars Act. So those programs, once fully implemented, will get us about half of the way to that 25% reduction. So we're in pretty good shape in Maryland, and there is legislation pending this session to put that requirement in statute essentially. And again, to the point of your discussions today, the legislation was, similar legislation was introduced last year. It was extremely controversial, as many of you know. We made a concerted effort this year, working in collaboration with a number of people here, as well as many others, to try to design a program that works for Maryland. And the concerns last year were the retention of existing industrial jobs, maximizing the potential for these new green jobs. And I say these only because there's so many estimates about how many jobs will be created, and it seems clear that there will be job creation. I'm not sure that we know exactly what the potential is for that at this point. But trying to build those concepts into the bill. So if you're looking at the big picture again, where we started with environmental regulation, I think we've got, depending on the issue, a variety of approaches underway. And with climate change, there's just tremendous opportunity for economic benefit. And it's clearly going to be a technology, a research and development driver. As you heard from the provost, energy efficiency with your buildings is a big part of it. So it touches all sectors of our society, really. So it's an exciting time, and we'll see what the federal government does over the next couple of years. But thank you for your interest in these topics, and I just congratulate you on taking the time out today to think about this in depth, and thanks for the opportunity.